Hey everyone, welcome to the fifth lecture of our series, and in this lecture we will deep dive into AWS Control Tower. In this entire video, we will talk about the concept, related components of Control Tower, and also we will cover the demo of Control Tower in this entire lecture itself. Okay, so whatever the concept we have covered as part of this series, your AWS organizations, landing zones, service control policies, guardrail to a certain extent, you need to have a better understanding on those concepts and then come to Control Tower that will help you to clear everything in terms of the concept, in terms of the configuration of Control Tower. So if you're not aware of those concepts, please go through the entire series. I will share the link of a playlist that will help you to gain much more insight toward the different concept before coming to Control Tower. So Control Tower, it's really good service which will help us a lot if we are operating in an enterprise world. It's a widely used AWS service across the industry, what I have seen, and recently it's gaining a lot of insights. Hey, let's use Control Tower. Let's use the best practices what AWS recommends to us, because what we are doing, we are setting up governance at security plus multiple accounts within AWS in an automated fashion, right? So it's not only helping us to automate the entire AWS account process, but it also helps the ongoing governance compliance system. That's why, as a package, I would say we have to understand this in detail. So let's look at some of the pointers. First, it follows a well architected framework which help us to create multiple AWS account within a matter of 30 to 60 minutes. That's the maximum number. Sometime I have seen I got it created within 30 minutes itself, but depends, right? You can automate the creation of AWS account with a built-in governance. That's what AWS Control Tower is doing. Then we are enforcing the best practices, standard, then the requirements with a predefined controls. When I say predefined controls or pre-configured controls, then those comes like a predefined service control policies, guardrails, as an example of AWS config, forcing some of the restriction towards your security compliance system. Seamlessly integrate the third party software at scale to enhance your AWS environment. So that is also one of a good factor. The integration is not an issue over here. We can integrate with the third party software. One of an example, integrate your entire SSO within Control Tower single sign-on concept with Azure AD or on-premises AD. So that's one of a example that I'm talking about. So that's what Control Tower important pointers look like. So AWS Control Tower, easiest way to set up and govern at scale. Scalability is not a factor over here. So what you have to do, enable it, provision it, and do the operations as per your requirement. Okay, let's go to the next slide. How it works. So I would say let's check the use cases pointer. Quickly deploy your application, provision the compliant AWS account, deploy the data residency control, and increase the agility without compromising the security, right? That is very important factor. Security, we always look for security. I can't compromise with the security when I'm working on an on-premises data center or as a matter of any cloud vendor, right? So security is our first priority, and then from there you can look at different set of set like factors, cost, and rest of the other factors, scalability, agility, and everything. But security for me comes always on the top. Now, how it works? Obviously, there is a famous diagram, the workflow I would say we have from AWS. So let's look at that first. One sec. Let me go to Chrome. Okay. So AWS Control Tower, set up a well architected multiple account environment under 30 minutes. Again, 30 to 60 it takes, depend upon the scenario and situation what is available in the backend, right? All these pointers we have covered. Now if you look at this diagram, this particular flow, AWS Control Tower simplifies AWS experience by orchestrating multiple AWS services on behalf on your behalf while maintaining the security compliance needs for your organization. So one of the important factor I want to cover up over here. So control tower, now we have covered the concept of landing zone. So in landing zone as well, I mentioned that it helps us to create, not create, it helps us to maintain the security as part of the and the compliance as part of our organization need, like divide the workload into multiple accounts, making a centralized system for every part of the industry and everything. That is what landing zone is also doing us the same, but control tower automates that entire process, right? I can do it manually. I can create different accounts, but the only problem over there is I might miss few of the pointers. So that's why control tower is helping us to reduce all those discrepancy, I would say, the manual efforts and everything. Now, you can see like we have identity access management center, then we have an AWS organization and service catalog. This is another module within AWS that will help us to create multiple AWS account with account vending machine. That's a concept within control tower. So while you create a control tower, I will show you as well that it creates a account vending machine. Basically, that's where the account provisioning workflow gets automated. Now, this is your control tower. You can administer your control tower. You can set up the landing zone with a multiple accounts, enable the controls across your environment at scale, create, enroll, update the accounts in the account factory, then monitor your landing zone, including OUs, accounts, and controls and everything. So, this entire process is automated. This entire process is compliant in nature as part of the best security practices. This is what we have as a generic workflow of AWS Control Tower. You can also go through the features, pricing model. Control Tower as a service itself is free, but we have to pay for other resources that we are using, like service catalog, cloud trail, storing of those logs will cost you, right? S3 buckets and everything. You have to pay for the resources that you are using, but the service itself is free. So let me go back to my presentation. Here I have written, let's quickly jump to AWS CT. CT is your control tower. I just want to initiate the entire process of the configuration because it takes somewhere around 30 to 60 minutes. And while we kick off the configuration, we can come back to our presentation and cover the entire rest of the concept of control tower. So just trying to save the time over this lecture for you guys. So let's go back to AWS Management Console. This is totally a fresh console that I have created. That's the Gmail account I have, on top of which AWS account has been created. Now, how to navigate to Control Tower? You can search over here as Control Tower or go to services. Inside management and governance, we have something called Control Tower. So let's click on Control Tower. Now, Control Tower, one thing to note, these are regional service, right? But again, you don't have to really worry about which region you choose as home, because uh, there are like few stuffs that doesn't relate to the region. As an example, account creation has nothing to do with the region, right? So you can select any of the region. As you can see, Control Tower is available in all these available regions like Virginia, Ohio, Oregon, Mumbai, Singapore, and rest like Melbourne, Hong Kong. These are like grayed out. So the service itself is not available. But again, as I said, as I mentioned, you don't have to worry about selecting the home region. You can go with any of them, depend upon wherever you are trying to select and make it as a home region. So AWS Control Tower setup a landing zone. That's the button that we are getting over here. So let's click on set up a landing zone. Here we will get certain level of options. Now first part is pricing. While some of AWS services come at no additional charges, but you have to pay for the services that you are using, like service catalog, cloud trail, SNS notification, CloudWatch, right? So you have to pay because you are going to use that services. Home region, you can select any of the home region as per your requirement. You can go with Virginia, which is the oldest one. I believe that doesn't changes stuff a lot, because as I mentioned, account creation, right, one of the part, or the OU structure, another part, doesn't need uh, any specific region. So I'm going for Virginia. Here, you can go with the deny settings. So basically, if you don't enable it, right, the control tower removes the control on all the registered OUs. So those are not comes as part of the governed state within control tower. So it as part of the best practices, I would say let's enable it. Then additional AWS regions for governance. So let's say if you want to have your workload in multiple regions, right? Then you can select multiple regions. Home is already selected as Virginia. You can select other regions like Oregon or Ohio, or depend upon wherever you are trying to deploy your process, right? So what this will do, the agenda behind this particular option is that whatever selection that you are making, AWS Control Tower apply the some sort of guardrails, the uh, predefined guardrails, service control policies, and everything on those regions as well, and make it as compliant. So I have selected Ohio and Oregon, right? uh, just as an option, right? Click next. Here we are getting two OUs. This is part of the security and sandbox. They are also creating sandbox. Now, security, that is a core account. Inside that you are getting two accounts. Basically, one is the log archive and second one is the security. We are not getting any account in the sandbox. You can create with the help of account vending machine or account factory with the help of service catalog. So I will show you that part as well once everything is set up properly. Click next. So here you have to give the account ID for a logging account. You can also import the existing account, or you can go with the new account process. Now, since we are creating everything from scratch, what I will do, I will take the account ID, my Gmail account ID for this account, and here I will do, this is what, log, right? Log, copy, same for the audit. So this will so AWS in the backend will verify whether this account has been used or not. Okay, click next. So it's already verified and we are through to that page. Cloud trail configuration. So obviously centralized logging is very important for us in terms of the best practices. So I'm enabling that option. Log configuration for Amazon SA. This is optional, but this is more of the log retention duration. Depend upon org to org. I have seen a few of the clients keep this particular setting for 3 months to 6 months. Some client keep it for 1 year. So depend, right? The default value is 1 year, and Amazon S3 retention for access logging is for 10 years. That's the default. So I don't need for even 1 year for the demo purpose. So, but still I'm going for 1 year. KMS, again, it's optional. So what I'm going to do, you can enable KMS, you can create the KMS key. So this is an optional, again, depend upon org to org, right? As part of the best practices, we should go with KMS as well. And since this is regional, so you have to create KMS in that particular region. I guess I have created KMS in Ohio. So let me go back over here first, because once we select the home region, right, we cannot change. So let me do a quick change over here, because I remember I created one key within Ohio. So let's do one more time, and I'll go with Virginia. Next, security and all, that's correct. Log archive account, let me paste, that's the log account and that's the audit account. Next. So I'm just trying to follow the best practices from security perspective. 1 year, 1 year, customize settings. As you can see, this is a control tower key that I created while creating of the account. So one of the, I mean, obviously there are like a lot of different issues that you might face while configuring or while doing this particular setup of control tower. There are like few prerequisites, I would say. So if your account is fairly new, so don't do it for at least 3 to 4 hours. Don't configure control tower for 3 to 4 hours, because you might not get an proper email to verify to do the confirmation of the subscription from SNS and all those stuff. So if those gets in the pending state, control tower execution might fail. So there is a proper uh, guide for a control tower. the number of troubleshooting steps we have. So I'll share that link as well, and we'll go through that link too. Click next. This is the review section. And finally, now here, service permissions, what exactly it's creating. So basically it's creating four roles. One is control tower admin, for accessing your infrastructure critical to maintain the landing zone. That's an inline policy. So if you're not aware of the policy structure or IAM, there is a detailed video on the architecture of IAM. Inline is basically follows one-to-one relationship. Then we are also getting another role, AWS Control Tower stack set. That's for more of a cloud formation creation. Then Control Tower Cloud Trail, that is for the logging purpose. And Control Tower config aggregator. So AWS config is another good service from the security perspective that we should know about. This is more of giving you the compliance and a non-compliance status. You can go ahead and read about the guidance in terms of the general guidance, org structure, IAM, account factory, and everything. Here, let's acknowledge and click on setup landing zone. So this will take time. As I mentioned, 30 minutes to 60 minutes. That's the maximum duration that I have seen. Sometime we get the configuration within, let's say, 20 minutes as well. Sometime it takes time. So there is some problem. Failed to set up the control tower. Validation error, doesn't support multi-region. Oh, okay. So the key that I created, that was for multi-region, and that is not supported. So let's do one thing. I don't want to create another key. Instead, I'll disable that option for now. Where is that? Cloud Trail. Yeah, this is the option. So let's uncheck this. Next. So we got to know like it doesn't support multi-region key. I haven't checked out that earlier, but it's good to know while doing the practical demo. Let's click on setup landing zone now. 1 year, that's the retention. And let's wait. It's in progress. So what all things control tower is doing, obviously the estimated time is 60 minutes. You can safely close this browser, so don't worry about that. Let's look at the pointers. We are getting two organizations, right? One for the shared accounts, one for that will be provisioned by the users. Three shared accounts, which is management account and isolated log and security audit. That's what the security OU is getting created. A native cloud directory with pre-configured groups and single sign-on access. So it also configures AWS SSO. AWS SSO is very helpful when you are operating from multiple accounts within an organization. So within, as an administrator, let's say I have 100 accounts and I don't want to log into each of the account because that is the most time consuming process in the world of cloud, right? So instead of that, what I can do, I can have a AWS SSO created, and with that I'll be able to list out all the 100 accounts at one place based upon the permissions and everything. So I guess we got two emails. So we got one is SSO, that's the configuration that it created. We have to accept it. Let's check out the second email. Welcome. So it's already created the account. As you can see, cloud for DevOps QA plus log, that's one of the account, and cloud for DevOps QA plus audit. So those two accounts has been created over here. It's already doing the stuff in the backend. 20 preventive controls to enforce policies. This is the guardrails. So preventive and detective. We are getting three detective controls to detect the configuration violation. So these are the things that are getting created. Now, since we already got the invitation, let me accept the invitation over here. Click on accept invitation. So meanwhile, obviously we will be going to get multiple emails as well for subscription confirmation. That is one for your SNS topic once it creates that. So now I have already created a detailed video on SSO. There are like two videos created, one for how to configure AWS SSO and one for Azure AD integration with AWS SSO, just to control everything from there. So let me create a password. Now if you look at, let me show you one more thing. Let's set the password. So if you look at this particular email, we are getting a access portal URL. This is not console.amazon.aws.com, right? So that's not a local URL, the public URL what we get while creating the account. That's not it is. Instead of that, what we are getting a specific app URL, and based on that, over here now you have this one, so you can sign in. I will not sign in because it's already running in the backend, so let it complete first. Once everything gets completed, because I need to accept the invitation, just wanted to make sure I don't uh, ignore those emails, just accept it whenever I get it or confirm the subscription. Okay, so let it run, and meanwhile we'll go to our presentation to complete rest of our concept. Let me start the presentation. So the big question, right? Why control tower? See, it's possible that you can go ahead and create multiple accounts similar to landing zone setup and enforce your best practices as part of your security standard, compliance standard from dashboard, like organization dashboard or console. So let me actually go back to one of the landing zone concept where I showed you, right? We have a workload account, sandbox, forensics, then core, we have log, audit, shared services, right? So we can definitely create our own set of standard. We can set our own SCPs that can be applied to the OU level or the account level. But the problem is, let me go back here. But the problem is, let's say if someone or any other, if you're any person who is starting from scratch, any organization starting from scratch by themselves, first thing what I see, it takes lot of effort to understand your control policies, your security standard, lot of knowledge on your how to segregate your org structure, right? Because I know, like, I have worked with customers who work only on one account, having multiple regions divided into their dev stage and prod, right? I have worked with the multiple accounts as well, where I have designed their structure. But as per best of my experience, what I have worked with the project, different projects on cloud platform, it takes hell lot of effort to understand all those stuff, setting up the security, guardrails, and everything. And what if you miss one of the important policy? That will create a lot of issues, right? If I miss one of the configuration, one of the important configuration, I might lead to a security risk on that account. So that is why the control tower comes into picture, where it helps us to align with the compliance security with the best practices what AWS provide, along with your OU, organizing your OU structure. Technically, I would say, we you just have to, the form that we have filled just few information, your email ID for the account, then whether you want to encrypt it or not, whether you want to enable few of the configuration or not, whether you want to go with the multi-region or not. So this is basically a very few simple set of information that what we have provided, and everything in the back end control tower is doing for us. That's why control tower is required. So let's look at few of the pointers. Set up the best practices with few clicks. That's what we have done. So if you have all the information of your account details and everything, it hardly takes for you to do the configuration and submit it and wait for it to provision in the backend. Standardize across all your AWS account. We are getting a centralized management policy, enforcing a governance and compliance proactively. That's where it's very important, because central management of the policies we are getting from organization, but again, you have to think, you have to write, and you have to apply. Enable end user self service, right? So for example, one of an example with end user self service, like, obviously as a control tower admin, we what we can do, we can create or give access to certain leads of your group, like development lead, staging lead, QA lead as an example, or the production lead. They will be responsible for creating their dev account. So for example, tomorrow there is a requirement of creating a dev account. In that case, uh, developer lead, whoever we have given access to, they can go ahead and create an account for their team. So they don't have to come back to us. So that's make it a self-service portal for them, right? So I, as an architect, I would say I will design that way, because for every account creation process, I don't want people to come back to me or an administrator, hey, give us some AWS account, we need it. Hey, we have given you the access, you are the developer lead, you have the QA lead, so you have the access, you have the knowledge, go ahead and do it by yourself. And if there is no usage, delete it. We'll give it that permission as well. Get continuously visibility into your AWS account. That's what that's where the config rules comes into picture. We can apply AWS config security rules that we can continuously monitor as part of the compliance and non-compliance activity. That's one of an example. And finally, gain a peace of mind. So if you're getting everything in the backend gets configured with best practices, you don't have to worry that tomorrow my account might get hacked. No, it's not possible. I haven't seen that thing is happening from long time, but you never know. But I haven't seen that happen a long time before. Okay, so now what, right? First of all, we need to understand what all things AWS Control Tower is doing for us. Okay, so one thing is it's enabling the governance, basically setting up the landing zone for you, establishing the guardrails, continuously managing it, automate the compliant account provisioning with the help of account vending machine. I will show you what exactly account vending machine is all about. And finally, go for the centralized identity and access management. That's where your SSO comes into picture. Since it's doing the configuration setup of SSO in the backend, and as I mentioned, SSO help us to give a dashboard with all AWS account running in an organization if you are an administrator, right? So we really don't have to do that sort of configuration, because see, now if you're trying to relate how much effort it takes to create an AWS account, how much effort it takes to create the service control policies, then thinking on the security side and everything, right? It takes a lot of effort. We are and making a governance, enabling a governance is very important factor for any industry, right? Setting up the standards, that is very important and it takes a lot of effort, lot of knowledge and everything. But with Control Tower, with AWS best practices, we are doing everything with few simple clicks of information. Now I have done a detailed video on AWS SSO. There are like two videos of SSO present over there in my channel. I'll share the link as well. One is how to configure AWS SSO, and the other one is the integration of Azure AD with AWS SSO. So how you can control your Active Directory in Azure, and then how you can gain access to AWS environment. Now this might be a familiar diagram now for you, because that's where we are setting up the landing zone. So we have a master account, right? We have AWS organization, setting up the single sign-on. By default, it gets connected to the default SSO directory. And that's where you see core OU and custom OU. Within core OU, we have a log archive account and audit account. Okay, so consider this part, right? These two accounts are the core OU that help us to visualize or do a centralized logging or do a centralized security controlling of those stuff from these accounts, right? Because why we need audit account? We need an audit account so you can make this account as a security administrator. One of an example, a famous example that I have covered on my channel, guard duty. So guard duty is an IDS, intrusion detection system. It's a cloud based IDS. What it's doing, it's scanning your entire account structure, looking for vulnerabilities. So let's say if you have 100 accounts, will you be going to configure guard duty on all 100 different accounts one by one? That's a pain. Instead of that, you can go ahead and create a guard duty administrator and take all the logs, get all the logs basically of the scanning and everything, and detect your environments with the vulnerabilities. So that's one of a good example from the security perspective. There is something called provisioned accounts. So provision accounts are more towards your custom OUs, right? So this comes under custom OU. You can create a baseline for your network, like create a transit gateway, make it a hub spoke model, control everything from hub in terms of the network. Then you can create certain set of baseline. Plus within custom OU, you can create your workload environment like business one unit, business two, business three, stage, prod, and dev, some sort of that structure. It also creates your stack sets, which is more towards your cloud formation, and service catalog. Service catalog, again, as I mentioned earlier, it's a module that does a lot of different stuff, but within Control Tower, it helps us to create AWS account. That's where the account vending machine, we call it as account vending machine. So landing zone, let's look at some of the pointers. Pre-configured, secure, scalable, multi-account, AWS environment based best practices model. Then you have a multi-account management using AWS org. Then we are using IAM using AWS SSO. This can be integrated with a third-party vendor like Azure or your on-premises AD. We are doing a centralized logging to AWS CloudTrail config. Then cross account audit using SSO and IAM. That's important while doing the SOC compliance or PCI DSS. Then self-service account provisioning, that's with the service catalog, that's what we call as account vending factory. And centralized monitoring and notification using CloudWatch or SNS. So CloudWatch, again, it's a default tool with AWS SNS notification service that you can get it. So I hope this clears in terms of what I'm talking about, because I have covered this entire concept in landing zone as well. Just wanted to go over once with Control Tower 2. Now, this is you must be aware of the multi-account model. I have covered this multiple times, I would say, but then again, core OU, we have audit account, then log, then divide your workload, and then apply your service control policies on OU, or you want to do at specific account level, you can do that. But best practices says go for the OU. If there are any exceptions, then go for your account level. So AWS Control Tower, centralized identity and access management. That's where I was talking about the integration of your single sign-on, right? So since it uses the default SSO directory, that's why the pre-configured groups gets created. I'll show you once we have Control Tower configuration gets completed, like auditors, service catalog, end users. Also enables the federated access management across your AWS account. I will show you that too once we have the URL and everything ready. Then pre-configured permission sets, operate or options to integrate with your manage AD or on-prem AD. So please go through the SSO integration with Azure AD. That is a very interesting concept what I have covered. Fine. Establish guardrails. This is another important factor which is basically on top of your SCPs. And as I covered previously as well, preventive guardrails and detective. Here we are getting 23, not 23, 20 preventive guardrails, which basically prevents your policy violation through enforcement. Implemented using AWS CloudFormation and SCPs, and we are getting 3 detective. If you have remember the dashboard of Control Tower, detect policy violation and alert in the dashboard implemented using config role. That's where your compliant and non-compliant activity comes into picture. Very much important concept. Again, these gets pushed out as part of the best practices to your accounts, and Control Towers is taking care of it. We are not doing anything over there. Express in a plain English language to provide abstraction over granular AWS policies. Pre-configured governance rule. Then again, they're like 3: mandatory, strongly recommend, and one is the good to have. Please go through that concept in my previous lecture that I have covered as part of best practices. Easy selection enablement on OUs, right? So again, important factor is it's securing your account, making it more compliant, right? Getting you a granular access policies on your accounts. Fine. Few of the example of guardrails are like you're required to have MFA on your root user. In terms of the data security, disallow the public read access to your S3 bucket. I have seen a lot of companies got hacked, that their data got hacked with the misconfiguration where they allowed the read and write access actually on their S3 public bucket. That make it more difficult for them to secure their data. In terms of network security, disallow internet connection via RDP. So that is never, it's a no combination, right? You cannot have RDP from the public world. Audit logs enable the CloudTrail and AWS config, monitoring, integration with CloudWatch, encryption, EBS volume encryption. So now, what Control Tower will do? So there is an option on when you go to your EC2 dashboard on top right, there is an option to edit, right? And there are like five different options there to secure your account. One of the option which is non-compliant, by default it is disabled, encryption of your AWS EBS volume in that region. By default it is disabled, but as part of the best practices, if you follow the SOC compliance activity and everything, you need to have your volumes encrypted, right? With either go with a custom KMS or AWS managed KMS. So that's why. Drift disallow the changes to AWS config rule set up by AWS Control Tower. So for example, whatever the config rules we are getting as part of the Control Tower implementation, then uh, if anybody tries to change anything as part of the config rule, then they will be going to get access denied over there. So that's what guardrail is all about. Perfect. Automate the compliant account provisioning. That's where a service catalog comes into picture, what we call as an account vending factory or account factory. It will help us to set up the account factory with the help of compliance and secure activity with service catalog. And that's where you get all the new accounts with a predefined guardrails, SCPs, baselines applied on top of the new accounts. Why? Because those are already applied at org level, and from there, whatever the OUs that you are getting, right? Whatever OUs or the accounts that you are provisioning inside that OU, it gets inherited from the parent OU. So built-in account factory provides a template to standardize account provisioning, configurable network settings like subnets, IP address. So whenever you go ahead and create an account, you will get an option. Hey, what subnet, what VPC, what is the CIDR ranges that you want to go and provision it. Automatic enforcement of the baselines with the guardrails and published via AWS Service Catalog. So that's how your account factory comes into picture. Self-service account provisioning system, that's what I talked about, where we get your service catalog as part of the end user. So we can grant an access where to the list of people, basically the example that I talked about, developer lead, QA lead, and the production lead, who's responsible for creating an accounts. So Control Tower publishes the account factory as a product in AWS Service Catalog, and Service Catalog administrator organizes, govern, and entitle the users to a portfolio or a product. So we call it as a portfolio. Inside portfolio, we create number of products. That's how Service Catalog works. So if I get a time in near future, I will definitely do a video on Service Catalog. This is another good interesting topic which you can play around with, right? So for example, product X, then account factory, portfolio A, portfolio B. That's how the level of segregation works. So user can configure and provision your AWS account resources without needing help of full privileges. You don't need to provide administrator access. It can be created without admin access as well. Perfect. So our next topic is service control policies. I don't want to cover service control policies in this lecture because there are like a lot of things to do with our control tower. So this is the entire concept of control tower that I wanted to cover up in this lecture. Now let's go back to our AWS account. Okay, so now control tower is successfully configured. As you can see, You have 2 org, 3 shared account, native cloud directory, which I showed with the help of SSO, 20 preventive controls, and 3 detective. If you scroll it down, let's see what all the recommended action. You can programmatically manage the controls API, add or register the OUs, enable more controls based upon your requirement. And then here we have 2 org, 3 accounts, 21, the same thing what was written above. Then here you will see, like, again, root, sandbox, and security. Root is the top layer of organization structure. Then sandbox, while doing the configuration, we saw like there is an option to create a sandbox, and there is a security account under which we have 2 accounts, logs and archive. So here are the 3 accounts got enrolled. Audit, that's the account email ID under security OU. Owner is Control Tower. This is compliant, compliant, compliant. Every account that got created, it's compliant in nature. Okay, you can enroll the existing account. So let's see, before going to the navigating to the other parts of the services that it created, I just want to show you few of the emails that I got while doing this configuration, right? One is your confirming the subscription to your SNS topic. That is important. If you don't do it, your control tower might fail. So that's, I did like successfully subscribe the SNS topic, both the ones. And after that I got almost 8 different config rules. One of them, if you go through each of them in a detailed way, it's into the audit account. One of them is AWS detect cloud trail enabled on the shared accounts. That's one of the trail. Now if I expand the other one, again, this is more towards enabling cloud trail. If I expand the first one, bucket public read prohibited. So these are the guardrails that got pushed to each of your shared account that what control tower created. This is coming from your audit. So that is got pushed out with the help of AWS config rule. Now let's go back to control tower, and I'm going to open my organization. Let's see how the structure looked like for us. So we provision this in Ohio. Org is a global service, so that should be not a problem to show up what exactly the structure look like. It should be like root, security, and sandbox OU. 3 OUs it will show to us. Here we go. So we have root, we have sandbox. We don't have any account in sandbox. We can create our own account as well. Then we have security. Under that we have audit and log archive. So that's one thing. Okay. Another stuff I want to show you is the SSO configuration. Let's navigate to SSO as well. So if I go back to my email regarding the one we got, accept the invitation for SSO, where is that? This one. So this is a dashboard URL, right? Where you will see all the different accounts that got created within our AWS environment. So let me go over here. It's Ohio. That's the dashboard. That's the URL got created in Ohio. You can customize it as per your requirement. Let's navigate to the users. So we have one AWS Control Tower admin, basically the administrator. Then if we go to groups, these are the groups got created. One is the log archive admin, service catalog admin for account vending factory. Here you can see admin rights to account factory in AWS service catalog. Then we have audit account, log archiver viewers, that has only a read access. Then rest of the different account and control tower admin rights to control tower for core and provisioned accounts. Then we have account factory for the read access as well. So if you navigate inside one of the group, you will be seeing much more detail with the group ID and everything, right? Now if I go to settings, what do we have here? So this is more towards your SSO configuration. It's a direct provision method. Okay, and we have set the password as well. By default, send email OTP to the users is disabled. That is something taken care by the control tower in the backend, and multi-factor was never enabled. So obviously it's disabled by default. You can enable it as per adding another layer of security. Uh, then we have AWS accounts. Let's go there as well. So I'm just showing you the navigation of each of the controls, right? Whatever has been created in our account. Just give me one more minute. Again, this is the root structure and everything. Permission set is very important. Let's see. So we got read access, service catalog, end users, and you can see the description as well, right? Then we have power user access, service catalog, full admin access, and administrator access. So these are the permissions what got created. Okay, so let's go back to control tower, and there is something called, so that's what it created in the backend, right? On the left hand side you can also see different stuff. So control libraries and users and access. So the same information you are getting over here as well. The shared accounts, landing zone settings. Let's see that too. So these are the versions, right? Updated detective server access logging and all those stuff. So it's almost what, they're like different versions of it when this got released. The latest one is this on 9th of Feb this year. Then regions, these are the regions that got governed because we selected only two regions, Virginia and Ohio. Rest, we haven't done that yet. So still we can modify the settings with the help of modify settings over here. Configuration, again the same, whatever we did as part of the activity. So I just want to see few of the other stuff. These are the controls we have. With the help, these are the proactive controls we have over here in the control. These are the all controls, 362 libraries. Perfect. So that's how it looked like in terms of the control tower. Now let me go back to the email, copy this URL. I'll open up a new tab. And if you remember, we have set up the password, right? With that email ID. So let's do that way. Copy the email as well. And we will log in to SSO. I'll show you how it looks like, right? Because we selected the home region as Ohio. So let's give our email ID and password. I'm logging in via my root user itself, but you can have your administrator access. You can log in from there. Now in the AWS account, we have three accounts, right? You can also do a search. There you can see it's a control tower, and you can also associate MFA devices, adding another layer of security on top of your account on SSO as well. So if you expand each of the account, you can see for the log archive and audit, we have administrator access. And for this root account, which is a master pair account or root account, right? We have two set of access, administrator and service catalog end users. So what exactly service catalog end users is doing here? That's where the account factory comes into picture. So let's log into as a service catalog user in the management console, and I will show you what exactly service account factory is all about. Not service control, account factory. That's where the automation happens for your accounts. Just give us few set of information, it will create an account for you. Perfect. As you can see, this is AWS Service Catalog user. We have logged in with that. I'm in Sydney. I believe it will be in Ohio for the service control. So let me change the region and we'll navigate to service catalog. Service, come on. Service catalog. Let's see how the product looks like. Again, it's a module. It's not only like we can only create one service catalog, or we can create number of products. As an example, you can have a cloud formation template created, which, and you can give that access to the end users, and they will be able to create a number of machines or VPC or everything from scratch. So as you can see, this is a control tower factory, right? Because I have logged in with service control end user, that's why I'm able to see it, and I can launch this product. Let's do that. Launch the product. Now, certain information that you have to give, name of the product that you are provisioning. So I will name it as workload OU. Okay, or you can generate a name as well. Here you have to give the account email. So what we are trying to do now, we are trying to create another account for our workload stuff, because we already have logging account, log audit account, we have already have a security account, the archive account is in place, right? Now it's time for us to provision a new account where we can deploy our workload, and those accounts will get all the guardrails, all the SCPs, whatever we saw as part of the policies and everything will pushed out to all these accounts as a governance model. So what is the email should I use? Let's check that. Copy this. I will name it as Cloud for DevOps QA plus WOU, workload OU as an example. Account name, let's give this as again workload, or you can give it as business or workload, whatever it is. Manage organization unit, this is going to the sandbox, because as of now we have only one OU got created. We can rename it as workload as well, because if you don't need sandbox, then you can rename that sandbox to different OU, or you can create another OU as part of your organization structure that will get added to your control tower itself. SSO user email. So SSO user email, a new SSO user will get created for this email if it doesn't exist, right? So again, what email, right? That's the user. Uh, let's do, come on. I'll use the same email, or let's say Cloud for DevOps QA SSO workload OU. SSO user first name, I'll give this as this SSO last name WOU. That's fine. You can enable the notification, right, with the help of SNS topic. But as of now, I'm not going to do that, because after the demo, I need to delete all the stuff. Click on, so there are like two things. You can create a plan that will show you a pre-execution step, what all things you will be going to create, right? Also, instead of sandbox, you can go with a custom OU or workload OU or business OU or forensics. Totally depend. So how many number of OUs that you will create after the control tower execution depends totally on yourself. Click on launch product. So in the backend, what it will do, it will go ahead and create our new AWS account with all the information what we have provided over here, right? So again, we need to wait for it to get provision, and mostly we will get an email on this account itself, because yeah, as you can see, Cloud for DevOps plus WOU, your Amazon services is account is created, now you can use it, right? It's as fast as it is. Okay, so let's go back over here. Let it run for certain time, because it takes time for the account creation. Meanwhile, let's go to our org structure. I'm going to refresh it. Just wanted to see whether we are able to see the new account over here or not. Okay, so that should come under sandbox. Okay, we have workload, that's the new account already created. Rest of the configurations and everything take time. But let's go to service catalog just to check the status. Okay, perfect. So now the status is available. Every configuration, the guardrails and service control policies, whatever it created in the backend, it has been pushed out to the new account. So one thing I just want to let you know, while filling up the form, this product form, I created a new email ID for SSO user. So that is not required because we already have a SSO user created, the email ID created, where we have all these accounts listed. So that is not required. Let me go back to the product section again, and while launching the product, right? So fill all the information as it is, account email and everything within SSO user email. Just give the email ID that you have created during the creation of your uh, this one the master account, basically the user ID that what we got for the master account. Let me show you the email as well. So I was talking about, where is that? Yeah, the joining invitation, right? So you can use this user email because that's the user we created or selected for the master account while Control Tower was configuring the SSO. So you don't need to create a new one. I did a mistake over there. Again, it's not a mistake. So basically that will create multiple SSO link for you. But still your account will get added to the existing environment because it's written there. If it is not created, then it will create for you. Otherwise, you don't need to do that. Perfect. So let's go back to our organization. It's already created. We can see it's in sandbox. Let's go to control tower. So now we have 4 accounts, 21 preventive and 3 detective guardrails. Let's scroll down, and here we have our workload account inside sandbox because we created it. So it's a self-owned environment, and all the guardrails, SCPs, controls, everything has been pushed out. So it's part of compliance account as well, and it's enrolled. Okay, it takes time, but it basically try to push out all the standard policies, right? So let me show you one more stuff within. So on the left hand side we have organization. So if you want to see what kind of guardrails and controls has been pushed out, so what you have to do, go to your account that you have created, or you can select the existing one as well, right? So let me go to first log archive account. Here you have all the details. That's the landing zone version, 2 governed regions, and we have all these controls. Here we have all the enabled control, right? So you can read out what all things got disallowed, what all things are allowed, right? We have 2 pages, 23 controls, which is pushed out, or 24 as a matter of fact, 21 plus 3. 24 controls has been pushed out for each of the account that got created, even for the new one. So you might say, hey, you have selected this security as part of the control tower. So let me show you the workload account that we created. Again, it's the same 16 what I can see over here. Not all required because a few of the things needs to be there only for your core OU. For the other one, it's not required everything. So that's why we have 16 controls over here, right? So you can go through all the standard controls, which basically help you to understand what kind of controls are getting pushed out as part of the AWS Control Tower. So let me show you few more stuff. Let's go to CloudTrail and AWS config. CloudTrail and config. Let's see what we have there as well. So this is the dashboard for CloudTrail. As you can see, AWS Control Tower baseline CloudTrail. Let's click here. So CloudTrail, you might know, this is a logging service, a centralized logging system where whatever you are doing on your account, it will log everything. The retention is somewhere around 90 days as part of the history. So here you can see we have a multi-region selected over here. It's a multi-region trail and it's enabled for all the accounts as part of the organization, right? So again, this is something created by Control Tower. So let's say if you want to create your own trail, then what you can do, just give the name and everything. Here there is an option to select or apply for all the accounts in an organization. So where is that? Log file validation, enable for all the accounts in my org. So whatever custom trail that you try to create, you can push everything to your sub accounts, which is present in your OU, right? So let's go back to AWS config. Why I don't see anything over here? So we might need to set up a trail, not a trail, a config, basically a recorder. So let me just cancel this out. One click setup, and let's say confirm. I'm not sure, this is one of an issue that I have observed during Control Tower, that it doesn't show proper configuration rule if you don't set it up. So that's one thing AWS might want to fix it in the backend. It may be a problem with the UI interface, but that's what I see. Okay, as of now, since we have an aggregator, because I got an email. Let's go back to my email address. We got 8 compliance changes for the audit, and these are the aggregate security notification, right? So we should be able to see something in the aggregator. Yeah, as you can see, AWS Control Tower config aggregator for an organization. So we have 4 compliant rules. It's all compliant, by the way. So that's what they are pushing from the back end, right? So let's say if I open up one of the bucket to public access, then it will consider that bucket as a non-compliant, because we have a rule created over here to public read access to the bucket is prohibited, right? So these are the things that is working in the backend for us, and that's how we create accounts. That's how we create rest of the other stuff within AWS Control Tower. So let's go back to Control Tower again. Few more important stuff just want to cover up. So if we go to our AWS organizations, within the policies, you can see service control policies are enabled. Now click on that. This is the one which gets a default access when you create AWS organization, and these are the guardrails got created for the accounts what we have created. So go inside to the policy as a guardrail, click on target, you will find out which OU this guardrail has been applied to. This is applied for the security. Now if you go back and select the other one, this is going again to the security. Okay, let's select the other one. This is going to the sandbox. So based on the best practices, Control Tower tries to push out all the policies to the registered accounts. Okay. Now, if you want to read out the content of the policy, you can go ahead and check this out. As you can see, the effect is deny for access analyzer and rest of the other stuff for sandbox account, right? Now, this is important stuff to understand. I will cover a detailed lecture with service control policy in my next lecture. But one more thing before ending up the entire cloud control tower within AWS, like you can create your own OU structure apart from security, sandbox, which are the default ones that we are getting it. So you can create your own OU, and that OU can be registered with your AWS Control Tower as well. So for example, if I create, let's say, tools, right? So I can create OU structure, right? Within that, I don't have any account, but let's go to Control Tower, refresh it. This takes time to, register it. So let me check that one as well. So if I scroll it down, view all organization, this you can see this is unregistered. So click on action and register this org unit. No accounts, that's fine. We can still register the OU. So it's registering. It will come to this particular dashboard. Like now we have already 3 OU, right? So within that, you can go ahead and create number of accounts with the help of the other ones, service account factory, or not service account, the account factory itself. So let me go back to the product section one more time. Let's launch a product. and within the organization still not there because it's still working in the backend for pushing out to make it as a compliant, right? So we have to wait for it, and then you will see that in control factory as well, the account control factory. Now, before again ending up this entire lecture, let's look at this. Let me start the presentation slide. So these are the key features of Control Tower. We are getting automated process for landing zone with best practices, guardrails for the policy management, account factory for account provisioning with few set of information. You can provision your account, dashboard for the visibility and action where you can see compliant, non-compliant, all the enabled controls, built-in IAM, pre-configured log and audit account, and built-in monitoring and notification with SNS and CloudWatch and automatic updates. So you don't have to worry a lot when you are setting up the business within AWS with the help of Control Tower. Most of the stuff are getting provisioned with the best practices in terms of security, policies, guardrails, and everything. Don't worry about the service control policy. We will deep dive into the next lecture. But I hope you are cleared with the entire concept and the demo. So play around with the model. And if you're facing an issue, place out a comment in comment section. I'll be there to help you. Have a nice day. Bye bye.